Torah portion, which I did, everyone is different. And I think that shows you something. There's always something to glean. We don't really know where the conversation will go, but everybody participating and guiding really makes that experience. So welcome to the Tuesday night Torah study. This is the MTOI weekly discussion and readings of the Torah portion. Tonight we have the portion Toldot, which we will get into in a little bit. But first we will, in our tradition here, take up praise reports and prayer requests. So go ahead and type it into the chat box. Or if you would like, raise your hand and we can call on you. I saw this earlier, not quite technically praise prayer time, but I see Tommy saying, had a coworker ask me about my tzitzit for the first time the other day. Awesome. Always a great witness. And as we know from Rabbi Steve, it's a great responsibility to be wearing those, because definitely they draw attention. All right. Thank you, Shamash Robert. Yes. 1 is yes, affirmative. 2, no, negative. 5, typing something long. That is our number system here. So if you're new, welcome. And if you're returning, welcome back. If this is your third time or more, well, you're family. You're not a stranger anymore. Prayer request from Rabbi Tom. Rebbetzin Joanne's broken ankle, 2 places. That happened last week during the move, and Rabbi Tom's not feeling well. Just got back from the VA in Nashville, going into silent mode for tonight. Absolutely, Rabbi Tom. I think of you and Rebbetzin Joanne often, and thank you for a wonderful teaching this past Shabbat. Really inspiring. Raymond, praying for a young man named Philip in our care whose father is attempting to manipulate him out of keeping Shabbat. Wow. Unspoken for a dear sister from Rachel J. I'm sorry, the screen jumped. Prayers for Rabbi Steve and Rebbetzin Joanne. On behalf of Carrie. From Chantel, prayer having some arthritis and fibromyalgia pain with weather change. Please keep me in prayer. Amen. From Diana, prayer for Cynthia. Torres needs healing. Unspoken from April. Nancy in Wyoming asks, how is Rebbetzin Joanne? Prayers for her, Rabbi Tom, and Rabbi Steve and his family. She broke her ankle, and Rabbi Tom just asked for prayers there, so he definitely can fill you in on the specifics, because I do not know and will not speak for him. Terry Zimmerman. Shalom, fellow Albertan, just a couple hours south. Continued prayer for our beloved Rabbi. Amen. Praise from Aaron Murray. He is home from the hospital finally. Amen. Glad to hear that. From Kevin, prayers that my daughter made it safe up from Florida and she's now in the bosom of our family. Amen. Always wonderful when family comes back together, especially from long distances. Unspoken from Dan in Michigan. From Cheryl in Oregon, praise that my granddaughter's hip is healing well from her surgery. Unspoken prayers. Mike and Lisa, praise. We had a nice Shabbat gathering with Alana and her 2 sons this past Shabbat. Prayer request. My son is having hernia surgery on November 16th. Asking for prayers for everything to go well and for a quick recovery plus an unspoken. That's from Lisa specifically. Steve and Gwen Waffle. Gwen and I have a court matter before us. We ask for a favor in this matter, not related to the children, by the way. Also prayer for the children's well-being as well. Amen. And yeah, just, with court and favor, and this is something, currently going through the 613 challenge. And for those who have listened to it before, and Rabbi Steve mentions it on other teachings, it's interesting that we are to appear before a judgment seat. And what does the judge judge upon? The law. So everything is legal. And I thought about this the other day, that how do you know that our Messiah is Jewish? Well, because he's a doctor and a lawyer. Amen, amen. So that brought that to mind, that yes, courts are an interesting example of what we go through as children of Elohim. But yeah, he's a doctor and a lawyer. Can't get better than that. That's my opinion, is that's what started the whole conundrum for Jews to have to choose one of those 2 careers. They couldn't live up to that example. Okay. Alice, praise report for all the needs the Lord supplies for me, and for wonderful friends who love me and take care of me. Claudia, of course, prayers for Rabbi Steve, healing and straight, protection and wisdom. From the Hoffman family, Olivier says prayers for continuing back pain and sciatica. From Janice, prayer requests for plumbing issues, finances, and Yahweh's guidance for finding my next job. This employment ends November 30th. Okay, so something seasonal. We'll definitely keep that in prayer. From Crystal, praise Abba for the approval for the PET scan this upcoming Friday that is needed for my husband in regard to the colon cancer recently diagnosed. Prayers for Rabbi Tom as well. From Chuck, prayer for wife still in hospital. Sorry, screen jump. Still in hospital after some complications, but due to release within the next 2 days. Tough couple days expected upon first getting home. Amen. Glad to hear that things worked out for you there. That whole situation. Tiffany requesting prayer for my son Ryan. Cold virus has a strong hold of him. From the Bibb family. Shalom, brother. Unspoken, please. From the Red family. Prayers that our house in Virginia would sell, that we would have favor with the landlord. Healing for everyone in the house, and for Maurice as he goes through his first week of work. Praise to Yah for all he has done to get us down to Cleveland, Tennessee, and for all he has done through everyone. Amen. I think that's such a testament too. I mean, you see it time and time again with everybody moving, and just the testimonies of everyone. You know, the Wyatts come to mind, especially affected by the hurricane. Everyone has just been so wonderful, and that is the true witness right there. Claudia, thanks for Rabbi Tom's message this last Shabbat about prayer, so fitting to today's parashat. Amen. Tammy Harvey, all praise to Abba for providing me with a job. From Robert and Nancy, Robert still has a sinus infection. Michelle, prayer for overwhelming feelings of discouragement. Just keep the truth close. Amen. Nancy in Wyoming, prayers for my son in Calgary. Hey, okay. That's only a couple hours south from us. As his company restructured and he lost his job, I pray that Yah now opens his eyes, ears, and heart. Us too. We'd love to meet him. Unspoken again from Olivier. Crystal. A message for Janet, just asking about email, so you two can take care of that. From Lula in Georgia, praise report my great-nephew Fisher, whom I asked prayers for with his brain tumor surgery, is home, and the entire ICU staff said his healing was impossible, and that it never happened. This fast healing does not happen. Thank you for all your prayers. Amen. And that brings something else to mind, that in those situations where it seems like came out of nowhere, and Rabbi Steve has said this before, comes out of nowhere, impossible, we know exactly who's working in that space, and that is our Father in heaven. Just a quick prayer or praise report. We had our first Erev Shabbat meeting as MTOI Alberta via Zoom this past Erev Shabbat, following the lead, for example, Gary Flint, MTOI Lakeview, and also Raymond with Beth Menorah. And it was such a wonderful time. Praise Abba for that. But here's the praise report. So we tried out the Zoom Basic. It was 40 minutes is the maximum before you can upgrade to have more participants. And so I said, okay, well, we'll try it the 40 minutes and see how it goes, and then we can upgrade if need be. So we're going, and we light the candles, and we do Kiddush Motzi, and we're hitting 40 minutes, and I see this pop up, and it says, would you like to continue? So I click continue, and it says this has now unlimited minutes. And I said, oh, that's interesting. So we finished, and we had a wonderful time. We're going to do it again this Shabbat. And I contacted Zoom after Shabbat and said, I just have a question. I just want to make sure I'm not doing something wrong. And I wasn't intending to go over the 40 minutes, and I want to upgrade this week. Can you just tell me what I did so I don't do it again? And they said, well, yeah, let me look into it. And they said, well, somebody paid for it. I said, no, nobody paid for it. He said, yeah, well, somebody did. And I just looked up and said, thank you, Abba, for that, because he literally was baffled. He's like, there's no way. Maybe it was a glitch, but he said somebody paid for it. And then we went ahead and upgraded, because that's on us to be also full of integrity and not try to take advantage of the situation. But again, thank you for that, Lula, because in those times of the impossible or it never happened, That's our Father, looking out for us. Amen. Laura in Oregon, praise. I had to recertify for the Sherry lift here in Oregon, and they did permanent, so now I only have to do it every 3 years. Praise indeed. Aaron Sullivan, the new schedule came out at work today, and my hours were cut back to almost nothing, not because of any fault of mine. I'm struggling to keep a good attitude and trust that Abba has something for me to learn out of this. It might be leading me in another direction. Amen. That's a fantastic attitude. Count joy in all trials. Amen. From Claudia, prayer for me about as I started again the searching to buy a home, but not my will, but Abba's will be done. Amen. You guys are great. Great attitude. We have a great leadership, great rabbi, and lots of great fellowship to be able to develop these attitudes over time. It's impressive. Shira says, wow, all praise to our mighty one. Amen. Terry, blessings for her daughter Bonnie, salvation for her husband, healing for Aaron. Okay. Definitely recommend the Are You Saved series to dive into a little bit about salvation. Just a quick note on that for sure. I don't know you well enough to know the situation, but I know that's something that Rabbi spent multiple iterations of the same series, and the last one was 17 parts, so definitely important to cover. Prayer for back pain from Greg and Mary. Another praise Abba for Lula from Rachel. Chris asks about Colonial Sanders. Pretty sure it's Colonel Sanders. I mean, I don't think they had KFC back in colonial times, but I could be wrong. I don't know. Walter and Rachel, prayer for Rachel's left ear. She has a constant ringing in it. We have from Tommy and Selena, please continue praying for a friend of ours who's going through a divorce. Praises for all the support she has gotten from others thus far. Praise Yahweh from Lorraine. I made enough at the flea market for one tire, and nice weather is predicted for next Sunday. Awesome. Another one from Claudia. Just want to praise Abba Kadosh for life, job, house, the family, all that he has done to me. Amen. We had a really nice comment last Torah study. I think it was from Beth, maybe. Who said, what if you woke up tomorrow with all the things you thanked Yahweh for today? And that really stuck with me, and been implementing that. I even made a reminder on my phone and my little gizmo Apple Watch just to remind to praise for everything. Especially in these frigid temperatures, even a roof over our head is a praise indeed. So thank you, Claudia, for that again. Hoffman's, please pray for spiritual vision and discernment for decisions in our family. In the name of our Master Yeshua. Prayer for marriage from Brother Sean over on the left coast in Washington. And we have praying from Reliever Caballero. Praying request for my girlfriend to find the true path. Travis and Jessa Owens and Liv Mashiach. Prayer. Travis has caught a cold and work has assigned an extra project, which adds up to 15 hours a week over the normal 40 hours. Wow. We need Abba's healing and strength to help through this opportunity he has provided for financial blessings. Amen. Yeah, from Shira, Sister Shira, praise Yah for confirming a crucial realization, leading to a very freeing decision about my life. Amen. Jonathan Thompson, shalom, praise Abba for technology to be in Torah study on a phone on the bus. Awesome. And that's commitment right there. Thank you for joining us, Jonathan. And just shows you, doesn't matter where you are, you can connect. And yeah, bearing no connection whatsoever. We understand people work, and we understand people have obligations that require them to miss this time, which is why we record it. So no pressure there. But if you can make it, you can try to make it. Definitely the effort is appreciated, just like our effort before our Elohim. Prayer for Abba. This is from Beth, to open doors for a more Torah-friendly job before my current contract renewal in May. Amen. People saying shalom. From AJ, a couple of prayer requests. Two dear friends of mine, Matt and Scott, are still in a Christian camp. I'm asking for prayers to disturb their peace and for Abba's will to be done. Awesome. Amen. Really, really, some wonderful prayers, some wonderful attitudes by everyone this week. If anyone else has any more praises or prayers, just give you another second or two. All right, well, I think that's about it. Now, in our tradition, as we ask one of the men, please, to raise your hand to open us up in prayer, to pray for all of everything submitted before, and also to open up the study. So let me just come back. So again, please, one of the men, open us up in prayer. I see, sorry. I see Mr.
Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, Ava, we humbly come to you this evening and with the intentions on study and learn more about you. And we ask that you would open our ears and our eyes and our hearts to receive that which is set before us. Father, you know all of the requests that have been made, those that are spoken and unspoken. We ask that you would, in your righteous and magnificent way, admit the peace, the shalom, the healing, the favor, whatever is needed according to your will. And we ask this in
Amen. Amen. And yes, Rabbi Tom says a happy birthday to Stephen Berkson. I believe he's 15 today. Amen. All right. Well, thank you for that, Chuck. Appreciate that. And now we'll get into the next portion of the weekly Tuesday night Torah study. If you've just joined, I will be your host for tonight, David Botwick-Reese, helping our Nasi, Rabbi Steve, take some much-needed time off, especially the fact that if he were to talk, it would not be good for his recovery. And if you're new, this is our weekly Torah study where we read the Torah portion and then we discuss it as a group, always looking to identify the more useful, applicable, something we can really apply to our lives today in our walk, in our halakha. And as I said before, every version of Toldot that I listened to today from 2015, 2016, 2017 had a different element tonight, and I look forward to what you guys bring to the table tonight with your questions and comments. So tonight we have Parsha Toldot. I'll put that in there for you. Toldot. And what does Toldot mean? So we usually do just give a good context for the name, even though it doesn't talk about everything that goes on in the portion. Generations, history. Yes, Toldot, generations. As we are going now into Yitzchak, into Isaac. And so we are today covering Genesis 25:19 to 28:9 in Toldot. And I have 8 readers. We have 8 readers. So if you'd like to read, please raise your hand. And we will get you to come up and read before your brothers and sisters. Raymond says, figuratively, the story. Claudia adds generation, history, memoir, chronicle. I have someone's mic on again. Let's see. Yes, also another way is thinking of, kind of your actions. Your actions also tell the story. Your actions are tell the generations. So yes, all of those in one. Okay, so we will go right ahead with the 8 readers. Again, we're going to discuss Toldot after we read it. And so the first reader we have, let me scroll up, is George. And so we're going to read the traditional blessing over each reader. This is known commonly in the Jewish community as an aliyah, as you come up. That's what the word aliyah means, to come up, to arise. And so George, he who blessed our fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless George, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, George, you're going to finish off chapter 25 with verses 19 to 34. Hey, George, you want to go ahead? Can't hear you.
Incidentally, he's actually just had his hand up since the prayer.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, Raymond. Okay, well, next up then we have Gary. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Gary, who's come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. Okay, Gary, for you, same instructions, verses 19 to 34 of chapter 25.
Okay, mic test. Wow, it works this time. All right. And Abraham took another wife, whose name was Keturah, and she bore him Zimron and Yokshan, Medan and Midian, and Ishbak and Shuruah, and...
Hold on, Gary. Hold on one second. We're starting at verse 19 of 25. 19 to 34.
I'm sorry, I'm so distracted by the fact my mic worked.
No worries. 19 to 34.
Okay. This was the genealogy of Yitzhak, Abraham's son. Abraham brought forth Yitzhak. Yitzhak was 40 years old when he took Rivkah as wife, the daughter of Bethuel the Aramean of Padan Aram, the sister of Laban the Aramean. And Yitzhak prayed to Yahweh for his wife, because she was barren, and Yahweh answered his prayer. And Rivkah, his wife, conceived. And within her the children struggled together, and she said, If all is right, why am I this way? So she went to ask Yahweh, and Yahweh said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 people shall be separated from your body, and one people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. And when the days were filled for her to give birth, and see, twins were in her womb, and the first came out red all over like a hairy garment. So they called his name Esau. And afterward, his brother came out with his hand holding on Esau's heel, so his name was called Yaakov. And Yitzhak was 60 years old when she bore them. And the boys grew up, and Esau became a man, knowing how to hunt, a man of the field, while Yaakov was a complete man, dwelling in tents. And Yitzhak loved Esau because he ate of his wild game, but Rivkah loved Yaakov. And Yaakov cooked a stew, and Esau came in from the field, and as he was weary. And Esau said to Yaakov, Please feed me with that same red stew, for I am weary. That is why his name was called Edom. But Yaakov said, Sell me your birthright today. And Esau said, Look, I am going to die, so why should I have birthright? And Yaakov said, Swear to me today. And he swore to him, and sold his birthright to Yaakov. And Yaakov then gave Esau bread and stew of lentils, and he ate and drank, and rose up and left. And Esau despised his birthright.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Gary. Next up, to go up to the Torah for the Aliyah is Kendall. He who blessed our fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Kendall, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. Okay, Kendall, you're going to start us off in chapter 26, verses 1 to 11.
Mic check. Okay. And there was a scarcity of food in the land, besides the first scarcity of food, which was in the days of Abraham, and Yitzhak went to Abimelech, sovereign of the Philistines, in Gerar. And Yahweh appeared to him and said, Do not go down to Mitzrayim. Live in the land which I command you. Sojourn in this land, and I shall be with you and bless you. For I give all these lands to you and your seed. And I shall establish the oath which I swore to Abraham your father. And I shall increase your seed like the stars of the heavens. And I shall give all these lands to your seed. And in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. Because Abraham obeyed my voice and guarded my charge, my commands, my laws, and my Torah. And Yitzhak dwelt in Gerar. And when the men of the place asked about his wife, he said, She is my sister. For he was afraid to say, She is my wife, thinking, lest the man of the place should kill me for Ribkah, because she is good looking. And it came to be, when he had been there a long time, that Abimelech, sovereign of the Philistines, looked through a window, and he watched and saw Yitzhak playing with Ribkah, his wife. So Abimelech called Yitzhak and said, See, truly she is your wife. So how could you say, She is my sister? And Yitzhak said to him, Because I said, Lest I die on account of her. And Abimelech said, What is this you have done to us? One of the people had almost lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt on us. And Abimelech commanded all his people, saying, He who touches this man or his wife shall certainly be put to death.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Brother Kendall. Next up, to make Aliyah to the Torah, to come up and read. Chuck, he who blessed our fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and he blessed Chuck, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. Continuing in chapter 26, verses 12 to 22.
And Yitzhak sowed in that land, and reaped in the same year 100-fold. And Yahweh blessed him. And the man grew great and went forward until he became very great. And he came to have possessions of flocks and possessions of herds and a great body of servants. And the Philistines envied him. And the Philistines had stopped up all the wells which his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham his father, and filled them with dirt. And Abimelech said to Yitzhak, Go away from us, for you are much mightier than we. So Yitzhak went from there and pitched his tent in the Wadi Ger, and dwelt there. And Yitzhak dug again the wells of water, which they had dug in the days of Abraham his father, for the Philistines had stopped them up after the death of Abraham. And he called them by names which his father had called them. But when Yitzhak's servants dug in the wadi and found a well of running water there, the herdsmen of Gerar strove with Yitzhak's herdsmen, saying, The water is ours. And he called the name of the well Esek. because they strove with him. And they dug another well, and they strove over that one too. And he called its name Sintna. And he moved from there and dug another well, and they did not strive over it. And he called its name Rehoboth, and said, For now Yahweh has made room for us,
Amen.
and we shall be fruitful
Amen.
in
Thank
the
you,
land.
Chuck. Next up, we have AJ Vogel on the left coast. Come up, make Aliyah to read. He who blessed our fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. May he bless AJ, who's come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. All right, AJ, you'll take us to the end of chapter 26, verses 23.
And from there he went up to Beersheba, and Yahweh appeared to him the same night, and said, I am the Elohim of your father Abraham. Do not fear, for I am with you, and shall bless you and increase your seed for my servant Abraham's sake. And he built a solid place there, and he called on the name of Yahweh, and he pitched his tent there, and the servants of Yitzchak dug a well there. And Abimelech came to him from Gilead, and Hagust, and one of his friends, and Phicol, the commander of his army. And Yitzchak said to them, Why have you come to see me, seeing you have hated me, and have sent me away from you? But they said, We have clearly seen that Yahweh is with you. And we said, Please, let there be an oath between us, between you and us, and let us make a covenant with you, that you do no evil to us, as we have not touched you, and as we have done only good toward you, and have sent you away in peace. You are now blessed by Yahweh. And he made them a feast, and they ate and drank. And they rose early in the morning, and swore an oath with one another. And Yitzchak let them go, and they departed from him in peace. And on the same day it came to be that the servants of Yitzchak came and informed him about the well which they had dug, and said to him, We have found water. So he called it Sheba. Therefore the name of the city is Beersheba to this day. And when Esau was 40 years old, he took wives, Judith, the daughter of Beri, the Hittite, and Basemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite. And they were bitterness of spirit to Yitzchak and Rivkah.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, AJ. And both you and Chuck can go ahead and put your hands down. Sorry about that. Next up we have Mr. Steve Waffle. You blessed our fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. May he bless Steve, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. All right, Steve. I assume it's you, unless it's Gwen, and I will redo the blessing. Verses 1 to 13 of chapter 27.
Okay. And it came to be when Yitzchak was old and his eyes were dim to see, that he called Esau, his elder son, and said to him, My son. And he answered him, Here I am. And he said, See, now I am old, I do not know the day of my death. Now then, please take your weapons and quiver and bow, and go out to the field and hunt wild game for me, and make me a tasty dish such as I love, and bring it to me to eat, in order that my being does bless you before I die. And Rivkah heard when Yaakov spoke to Esau his son, and Esau went to the field to hunt wild game to bring it. And Rivkah spoke to Yaakov her son, saying, See, I heard your father speak to Esau your brother, saying, Bring me wild game, and make me a tasty dish to eat, and bless you in the presence of Yahweh before my death. And now, my son, listen to my voice according to what I command you. Please go to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats, and I make a tasty dish from them for your father, such as he loves. And you shall take it to your father, and he shall eat it, and that he might bless you before his death. And Jacob said to Rivkah his mother, See, Esau my brother is a hairy man, and I'm a smooth-skinned man. What if my father touches me? Then I shall be like a deceiver in his eyes, and bring a curse on myself, and not a blessing. But his mother said to him, Let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Steve. Next up, well, will be Dan or Evangeline who will be reading. So I can read the correct blessing. Dan? Yeah, is that you're going to read? Some mic issues. Go ahead and test your mic, Dan. Yeah, it sounds like a robot or the voice changer, yeah. Yeah, no, that's not going to work. I am Darth Vader, yeah. Sounds like you're going to ask us to put the money in 2 duffel bags and leave it at a certain. All right, well, we'll go back to George. That was pretty great. No worries. That good for a laugh, and then maybe test it on the side. What you can do, you can actually mute your mic, and if you click on adjust microphone volume, you actually can test it yourself without everyone else having to hear. So go ahead and put your hand down, and we'll go to George.
All right, mic check.
Sounds good. I'll read the blessing again, because I don't know if you were here at the first time. He who blessed our fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and he blessed George, who has come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah, made a set-apart one, bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen.
Right.
Okay. George, you're going to take us from 14 to 29 in chapter 27.
All right. And he went and fetched them and brought them to his mother. And his mother made a tasty dish, such as his father loved. And Rivkah took the best garments of her elder son Esau, which were with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, her younger son. And she put the skins of the young goats on his hands, and on the smooth part of his neck. Then she gave the tasty dish and the bread which she had prepared into the hand of her son Jacob. And he went to his father and said, My father. And he said, Here I am. Who are you, my son? And Jacob said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. I've done as you have said to me. Please rise, sit and eat of my wild game, so that your being might bless me. But Yitzhak said to his son, How is it that you have found it so quickly, my son? And he said, Because Yahweh, your Elohim, brought it to me. Then Yitzhak said to Yaakov, Please come near, so that I feel you, my son, whether you are truly my son Esau or not. And Yaakov went near to Yitzhak, his father, and he felt him and said, The voice is of Yaakov, but the hands are the hands of Esau. And he did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands. And he blessed him. And he said, Are you truly my son Esau? And he said, I am. And he said, Bring it near to me, and let me eat of my son's wild game, so that my being might bless you. So he brought it near to him, and he ate. And he brought him wine, and he drank. And his father Yitzhak said to him, "Please come near and kiss me, my son." And he came near and kissed him, and smelled the smell of his garments, and blessed him and said, "See, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field which Yahweh has blessed. And Elohim gave you the dew of the heavens, and the fatness of the earth, and plenty of grain and wine. Let people serve you, and nations bow down to you. Be master over your brothers, and let your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be those cursing you, and blessed be those blessing you."
Amen. Amen. Thank you, George. Next up, Tommy and Selena. Who will be reading? Will it be Tommy or Selena? Survey says, Tommy. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, may he bless Tommy who's come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. Okay, Tommy, you're going to finish chapter 27, verses 30 to 46.
Mic check. And it came to be, as soon as Yitzhak had finished blessing Yaakov, and Yaakov had hardly left the presence of Yitzhak his father, that Esau his brother came in from his hunting. And he too had made a tasty dish and brought it to his father, and said to his father, "Let my father rise and eat of his son's wild game, so that your being might bless me." And his father Yitzhak said to him, "Who are you?" And he said, "I am your son, your firstborn Esau." Then Yitzhak trembled exceedingly, and said, "Who was it then who hunted wild game and brought it to me? And I ate all of it before you came, and I have blessed him. Yea, he is blessed." When Esau heard the words of his father, he cried with an exceedingly great and bitter cry, and said to his father, "Bless me too, O my father." And he said, "Your brother came with deceit, and took your blessing." And Esau said, "Was his name then called Yaakov? For he has caught me by the heel these 2 times. He took my birthright, and see, now he has taken my blessing." And he said, "Have you not reserved a blessing for me?" Then Yitzhak answered and said to Esau, "See, I have made him your master, and all his brothers I have given to him as servants. And I have sustained him with grain and wine. And what then shall I do for you, my son?" And Esau said to his father, "Have you only one blessing, my father? Bless me too, O my father." And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. And Yitzhak his father answered and said to him, "See, your dwelling is of the fatness of the earth, and of the dew of the heavens from above. And by your sword you are to live, and serve your brother. And it shall be, when you grow restless, that you shall break his yoke from your neck." And Esau hated Yaakov because of the blessing with which his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, "The days of mourning for my father draw near. Then I am going to kill my brother Yaakov." And the words of Esau, her older son, were reported to Rivkah. And she sent and called Yaakov her younger son, and said to him, "See, your brother Esau comforts himself concerning you to kill you. And now, my son, listen to my voice, and rise, flee to my brother Laban in Haran, and stay with him a few days, until your brother's wrath turns away, until your brother's displeasure turns away from you, and he forgets what you have done to him. And I shall send and bring you from there. Why should I be bereaved of you both in one day?" And Rivkah said to Yitzhak, "I am disgusted with my life because of the daughters of Heth. If Yaakov takes a wife from the daughters of Heth, like these who are the daughters of the land, what is my life to me?"
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Tommy. And our final reader for the evening, for the 2018 Toldot portion, will be Brother Raymond, Beth Menorah in Wisconsin. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Raymond, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. All right, Raymond, I'm going to finish off the portion, verses 1 through 9 in chapter 28.
It's coming through okay? And Yitzchak called Yaakov and blessed him, and commanded him, and said to him, Do not take a wife from the daughters of Canaan. Arise, go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel your mother's father, and take a wife for yourself from there, from the daughters of Lavan your mother's brother. And El Shaddai bless you, and make you fruitful and increase you. And you shall become an assembly of peoples, and give you the blessing of Abraham, to you and your seed with you, so that you inherit the land of your sojournings, which Elohim gave to Abraham. So Yitzchak sent Yaakov away, and he went to Padan Aram, to Lavan son of Bethuel the Aramean, the brother of Rivkah, the mother of Yaakov and Esau. And Esau saw that Yitzchak had blessed Yaakov, and sent him away to Padan Aram to take himself a wife from there. And that as he blessed him, he gave him a command, saying, Do not take a wife from the daughters of Canaan. And that Yaakov had obeyed his father and his mother, and had gone to Padan Aram. So Esau saw that the daughters of Canaan did not please his father Yitzchak, and Esau went to Ishmael, and took Mahalath, the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son, the sister of Nebaioth, to be his wife, besides the wives he had.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Raymond, and thank you to all the brothers who read before each other this evening. It is such a blessing to hear the word read out loud indeed. There's a traditional closing blessing. Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chaye olam nata b'tochenu, Baruch atah Yahweh noten haTorah. Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh, our Elohim, King of the universe, who has given us a Torah of truth and has planted eternal life in our midst. Blessed are you, Yahweh, giver of the Torah. Amen. Amen. Okay, well, before we go into the Midrash, and we've got plenty of time to address everything in Toldot, Shamash Robert, turn it over to you to see if there's any announcements you'd like to cover before we proceed. So just temporarily hold off on your questions or comments. We will get to that. So go ahead, Shamash Robert, if you have anything you'd like to announce on behalf of it.
Yeah, no, actually, I don't have anything prepared to announce. So,
Okay. Well, that's great. More time for Midrash. That's great. And so, again, we will go into the Midrash, as we always do, as set forward the standard. I think it's a great practice, especially here in the limited time we have, which is really only an hour to discuss the various layers and levels. We want to focus on, where do we see ourselves in this portion? How can we apply this to our walk? Who was here last week for the Torah portion led by Rabbi Tom? Just put some ones and twos. Ones. Okay, so we ended up talking a fair amount, for example, on benevolence, poverty, giving to people on the corners of streets. That is not in Chayei Sarah at all on a direct level. But it came out of the discussion of Avraham buying the cave of Machpelah and not wanting it for free, and it led to a beautiful discussion about, a cheerful, giving heart and the need to take care of the poor, and that's fantastic. So that's something that hey, it's not directly related, but that is something that we need to think about and something that we deal with, because it's definitely the fullness of the intent that we know modeled by our Master, Yeshua Messiah. So again, with that kind of preface, we will go chronologically through chapters 25, to the early part of 28. We'll definitely hit on some important points that our Nasi Rabbi Steve and others who have led this in the past, including Raymond, have touched upon. So we'll definitely cover those important points and get to the meat and the lentils. Pun definitely intended. So go ahead, Mr. Steve Waffle.
Okay. I always like to try to find something that I see that I can apply myself out of the Torah portion. And for me, it seems like even if it looks like you have no blessing, and I believe that Yaakov was obedient, so in his obedience, he was able to go to his father in prayer and ask for a blessing, and the blessing he asked for was and received was greater. So because he got two sons rather than one, and it brought about two great nations. So even though what he started with seemed like nothing, nobody to follow in his footsteps as his son because his wife was barren, out of his obedience he went to his father in prayer, and his father gave him a huge inheritance. I don't know, gave him a huge, many seeds to follow after him. So I think if I can make sure that as I go to my father for requests, that I check myself to make sure I'm in line with him, and then I shouldn't have a problem expecting him to answer. Maybe not always what I want, but it would line up with what he wants. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Steve. Definitely, I just want to just quickly separate that, and I see Raymond has hand up, which I'll get to in a second. The aspect of the kind of two great nations and everything with Yaakov and Esau we'll definitely get into, because that's part of a lot of complicated aspects of this Torah portion. But I think, Steve, what you're hitting on primarily, which is fantastic, which is the aspect of prayer and praying on behalf of somebody else, as we see here from Yitzchak, praying on behalf of his wife, is a very, very heartfelt and meaningful aspect. We see here later that Rivka, she goes and seeks to find out what's going on and also prays. But the prayer on behalf of somebody else could even be possibly more powerful. So go ahead, Raymond. I don't know if you wanted to touch on that. I'll start copying questions down for everybody.
All right. So I think that was actually a good treatment of it. I'm not looking to expand on that, but there was something that I want to get ahead of as much as possible because I know that it's entirely possible for it to pop up 70 times in the chat any minute now, and just wanted to get ahead of it because there's something that we can do when we're reading the Torah that is treading on dangerous ground. When we're drawing conclusions about the characters in the story, we sometimes forget that they're real people. And so we have recently been through, a bunch of to-do in real life, in practical real life, about false accusations and Lashon Hara and all of that. But very, very infrequently do we weigh the seriousness of jumping to accusation and jumping to pointing the finger and jumping to, oh, he sinned or she sinned in the scripture. We very often don't think of them as real people and think about what if they didn't really sin? What if I'm just misreading this? And I would encourage us to recognize that slander is slander, whether it's done against the living or the dead, and whether the person is a character in the story or not. If they're a real person, then we want to be very careful. Now, Especially concerning the righteous, though. I mean, it's one thing if you know through the scripture having an unequivocal stance on a character being a wicked character or morally ambivalent character, but especially about the righteous, we want to be careful about how we assess their actions. And so when we see about Abraham in some of the prior Parshiot, and he's obscuring the marital status between him and his wife. A lot of times people like to jump to that and say he was lying, and it's not necessarily the case that he was actually lying. Refusing to give somebody information they don't have a right to is not necessarily lying. He actually maintained that what he had said was true, and he didn't say anything about defending a lie. He said, well, the information I gave you was true. She is my sister. We see Yitzhak repeat the same kind of activity, and again, there's nowhere in the actual text of the scripture that it accuses either of these men of lying. Now, when we get to the case with Yaakov here and coming in before his father, notice that he initially, in his response to his mother, was extremely concerned about the idea that it could be seen as deception and could be seen as lying. And his mother encourages him, saying, whatever about this makes you uncomfortable, it's on me, it's not on you. But even the plan going in, she didn't tell him to lie. And he didn't go in wanting to lie. He went in hairier than he naturally was. And the idea was, if I go in like this and give him the food, he'll just give me the blessing. And it's actually the father at Yitzchak that sort of probes and tests and sees how, for possible, he sees how committed the son is to the course. Now, there's been much said on the earlier recordings about how much Yitzchak actually knew about the occasion, and I'd encourage people to go back and listen to those and cover, but we're exposed to the idea that it's entirely possible that Rivka and Yitzchak knew and had actually planned together this occasion so that they would have an ability or an excuse to give the blessing to the son who actually merited it. Okay, and so I just want to caution us against jumping to conclusions about how sinful these characters are, and encourage us to learn how to give the benefit of the doubt, because really it's an extension of the monumentally huge obligation to love your neighbor as yourself, to not slander and to not give false accusations. And so let's just always remember that as we are studying the Torah and as we are reading the Torah, that we are still obligated to keep the Torah, even with regards to how.
Amen. Yes, thank you, Raymond. And regarding all of the birthright aspect, the lying, the deception, all of that, I see that in the chat. We'll definitely get to that. I'm actually going to attempt to turn it on its head a little bit this year. Like Raymond said, there's plenty of information in the previous recordings. But the key aspect there is that we are humans, and therefore we'll immediately jump to the human emotions and the human experiences and create a story and possibly a soap opera of what's actually happening. But the thing that we need to look at, like Raymond said, is not only the big picture, but the big picture here is the will of the Father. And so rather than injecting ourselves into the, he said, she said, he did, she did, what happened, let's look at the overarching story and the actions caused by individual people that possibly, even if there was something that looks to us like, oh, this looks a little bit fishy, we look at the overarching theme, and that actually points more than the individual action. So thank you, Raymond, for clarifying that for sure, because, we look at these, interactions. For example, we see with Yitzchak, we see it here again with Avimelech, saying, this is my sister, and then he comes back to Yitzchak and says, well, what if one of our people had lain with your wife? Well, that's the lawlessness of the nations that you're saying now you're accusing Yitzchak for. So what is more faulty? The lawlessness of saying that somebody might have slept with your wife and you told us it was your sister, or that protection of the wife's sister? So we definitely need to look at that. Okay, so I have some questions here. I see from, I think it was Claudia, we have prayers always need to be in line with Abba's will, may take longer than we expect, so patience is a must, and sometimes we need to accept and know. It's not about us. Amen. We definitely see that here in chapter 25. It happened, we don't know, it possibly 25 years later. We see the 40-year-old, and then we see 65 when the boys are born. So it definitely takes time, and be patient. Gary said earlier, husbands, pray for your wives. Amen. Key aspect here. Selena said, prayed a long time for babies, given twin boys. She too said, what in the world are they doing in there? Absolutely. Also keep in mind for question that comes up, for the blessings. I'm not saying this is what's happening here, Selena. It's just brought to mind. In terms of blessings of children, that applies to corporate Israel. That doesn't mean that we won't be families blessed with children, but we have to understand that overall blessing was made as a whole for corporate Israel. But thank you for bringing that to light, because I know that's a common question. Okay, let me just scroll up here. 25. Just a quick note here. Something that is interesting when it regards to trained discipleship and qualification. There are some sources and a lot of commentary and support that when it says that Rivka went and sought Yahweh, she went to a place of prayer. She went to the tent, the schools of Shem, the Melchizedek. And so she's asking him, who would be answering, the trained person answering on behalf of the Almighty. So I think that is an interesting piece there. Let me see the questions. He says, what does it mean that Yaakov was a complete man in verse 27? So I have some notes on this, but I'd like for people to chime in if you just want to put in the chat box what you think, if you've studied it out or you just have a guess, either one, what this looks like, because this is a key aspect, in my opinion, looking into it, of kind of the arc of the entire story in this portion. All right, let me scroll down. Full of integrity, walking in the fullness of integrity. We have studied Torah, man of the tents. Integrity, whole, simple, upright, quiet. Okay. Anybody else with that specifically? Hunter and chef. Well, this would be, and we have, that's from Gary, or Greg, excuse me. Raymond says the integrity layer has a lot of coverage. There's also a layer that he was everything a firstborn should be, similar to a mensch, everything a person should be. And so, so a complete man here. This is something pretty interesting. So, the translation might, some say simple, or plain, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think it's interesting to see the focuses of both children. We have Esau was hunting a man of the field. So very interesting. This is nothing about hunting in modern times, but just very focused on the world. And then we had, I know Gary mentioned that, we had Yaakov, he was studying, he was in discipleship with Shem and Eber. Pious, he was simple, honesty, full of integrity. And also a possible hinting that Esau would always be shedding blood. We see that with the nation of Edom. And Jacob would be working righteousness. We even see in the book of Obadiah, the prophecy judgment of Esau by Elohim, the actions of that nation for their blood shed. The complete man verse, would this be a remez or drash layer? Both, hinting at something, and then the drash, explaining on the various layers of it. But I'm in no place to tell you what is the actual one. I mean, and I think it's hard to even put one in each category. So we covered that, Tom, and the complete man. Let me see if I missed something. Civil and wild. Yeah, possibly. I mean, I think there's definitely something, in the imagery untamed about Esau. But I think it's an interesting point here to make. Maybe this, does this show something about our activities and interests and hobbies? Something to keep in mind that, I don't know about you, but, when we started following Yeshua, when we became covenanted, when we are, becoming Shabbat-centric and Chag-centric, it's interesting to note that maybe some of your friends and family members noticed that your life became a lot more simple. Maybe to their appearances, it became a lot more nuanced for us. But maybe on the outside, it's, well, you don't go out on Friday and you don't do this, you don't celebrate that. And I think it's interesting here that maybe we have that type and shadow right here with the brothers, that are we focused on these hobbies, this obsession that Esau was really, that was his life, or something where we would be, maybe a little bit simple, honesty. And thank you, Nancy, for bringing that to note. Yes, the Hebrew word is tam. And does that ring any bells? That would definitely ring a bell, similar to tamim in terms of integrity. Raymond says he sees it as remez in the word tam, but you can drash from it to expand to how I put it. Well put. Thank you. The dwelling in tents, Dan, in verse 27, a lot of commentary says there that is actually dwelling in the tents of Shem. There's actually learning, and being taught Torah there. Now, let me scroll up. Sorry. There's just a lot going on. Let's see. We have from Crystal, intercessory prayer examples, ? Great explanation given about slander and speaking the truth. Well, I mean, intercessory prayer, and I think we covered this last week even with the servant's prayer for Abraham, that always praying for Abba's will be done. And these are very special circumstances, seeing the unfolding of the start of the nation of Israel. And so we can always pray for something specific. We covered this last week, but always Abba's will be done. And so the servant's prayer was specifically, regarding that will to be fulfilled, and also with the master who he knew was completely submissive to the Father.
Mic check. Okay, the one thing, and maybe I'm taking it totally wrong, David, but when Rivka tells Yaakov to basically deceive Yitzhak, wasn't he following the commandment to, honor thy father and mother? Wasn't he honoring her by doing what she asked, even though he had, obviously he had questions about that?
That's a great question, and that's definitely a component of it in terms of honoring the fifth commandment there. So we're just going to put a tiny pin in that as we get to that, but that's definitely right on the right track, definitely a component of it. Just want to go chronologically because I think this is a really important one too, to understand the context. So just scrolling up, we're not going to discuss what older and younger means in the political context. It's not really what we're going to focus on. We have the midrash about the issue with the twins leaping. Yeah, it's possible, plausible. You can see it even more in their actions once they're grown. So I'm not going to rule that out. But yeah, as we see, if it kind of points and it leads you to, like anything else, to a better understanding of Torah and actually in line with what everything else is saying, midrash and commentary is helpful, just like this. Okay, so we're going to finish chapter 25 with the key question we have here earlier is, why did Esau despise his birthright? Because this is a component which leads into the whole ploy possible, like Raymond said, that they were in on it, or just possibly the individual actions taken by Yaakov. I'm not telling you where I stand on that, but why did Esau despise his birthright? Does anyone want to chime in on that? Oh, sorry, AJ, did you have your hand up? Was that about this or something different? Something different. Okay. We'll wait for that and we'll get back to that. So anything about the birthright aspect, because I think this is really vital and it really didn't want the responsibility. He did not have heart to take on the responsibility. His birthright would have made him a priest. Didn't want a responsibility. He thought he was going to die, and his birthright would do him no good if he was dead. Perhaps he wanted to do his own thing, greed, power. How could he be so flippant about it? Amen. Is it possible that Esau is a representation of our flesh, and Jacob a representation of our spirit, and the struggle between the two? I think that's definitely plausible. And, in terms of the birthright that we're focusing on right now, the despising of it was because he was focused on something else. Yeah, he didn't want to get off his own throne. If he didn't want the responsibility, I just think he possibly cared about something else. I mean, we see that the despising was after the fact, right? I mean, at least it's written here that it's this idea of he did these things and he didn't care about it. He really did not value it. No future vision, worldly gain. It was this immediate satisfaction that he was looking for with the lentils, with the stew, rather than thinking about something that was really, really meaningful. And this is a question to us: is how easy is it for us to sell our birthright? What do we give our birthright to? Our birthright meaning doesn't matter if you're originally from Judah and born into this, or are grafted in. Now that we are covenanted, now that we are following Yeshua and we're walking this out, your birthright of the promise of Elohim through Messiah, what do we give it up for? We see the writings and apostolic writings. We have to run the race, receive the crown. Even Hebrews in chapter 12 talks about Esau, selling his birthright. What do we give it up for? I think that's something to take away from. So is despising. We have a couple more questions here. Yeah. Nate says he spent too much time in eschatology and thought it was the end of the world. Hey, you know what? Actually, it's a great point, Nate, to be honest, because as rabbis taught before, there's a lot of people who put so much focus on that, and it's really funny. I really appreciate that, but it's actually a pretty good point, because there's a lot of people who focus on that. They teach. They're taking responsibility over instructing people a certain way, and therefore people are making decisions. I'm not saying this is what happened here, but people are making decisions that affect that, because they don't see the fullness. They don't see the entire vision and what's to come. Raymond chimes in. Esau was not ready to settle down. He despised serving Elohim because he was overly selfish and carnal. Amen. Yeah, I mean, all of this points to, and I think that comment there, I think it was by Robert and Letha, of the separation between flesh and spirit, that he was focused on the world. And this is something that brought to mind also is in our birthright, in our guarding of it, that we should be, just like we guard the commands and guard the covenant. Are we in the world, which would be Yaakov? Are we of the world, which could be Esau? Maybe that's something to think about. What are we focusing on? Our activities, our interests, our hobbies. Is it taking away from our study of the Word? Is it taking away from being someone full of integrity, honest, simple almost? I think it would be such a blessing to be called simple and plain and a man of and woman of Elohim. Okay. We have a lesson not to focus on what's right in front of us, have a wider vision. Amen. Definitely immediate satisfaction. This goes back to waiting for prayer, waiting for Abba's will be done. I know Rabbi said this before, but if you spend all the time getting what you want now, you'll never get what you want later because we're too busy in this immediate satisfaction loop. Beth Smith says he lacked commitment, ties in with having 3 wives that disgusted his parents. That definitely chimes in. We'll get to that. Surface gain is not always good. Raymond says, oh, grief, we're flirting with doing this all the time, even when we think we're doing great. It's all over the place. Okay, let's see. Yeah, maybe he didn't want to stay home. Maybe there was an aspect of wanting to hunt. Again, this is being out in the world and being known. I mean, we see this with Nimrod, right? He was a great hunter. We have, and it's pretty interesting. I'm not giving a ruling on this, but it's pretty interesting, the kind of understanding of hunting in the Jewish community. And both in terms of the creatures of killing for sport versus for food, but also this aspect in Scripture of those who are being mighty and being feared, but for something that is being feared among men, not among Elohim. Tommy and Salinas has taken a practical lesson. Yes, not take additional wives and then double down and take even more wives. As our Rav Tom Mitchell says, that means doubling down on mother-in-laws. I don't feel that way. My mother-in-law is a wonderful angel. She is. But I always like that joke by Rabbi Tom. Yeah, we flirt with giving up the birthright all the time, even if we don't know it. Don't give up the birthright for a Five Guys hamburger. Yeah, or lentils or anything, whatever your food of choice is. And they hunt with their words to ensnare men. Amen. Okay. So I think that's a good foundation. I hope you bear with me because I think it's really important as we get to the final scene. We're going to take it like a movie. We're going to get to the scene of the hairy arms and the dim eyes of Yitzchak and the blessing, that we understand that Esau had already despised his birthright. He gave it up. Yes, Yaakov asked the question. We know that. But Esau was despising the service, the possible aspect of service of being a priest, of being the firstborn, of doing what you need to do to serve Elohim. Okay, so questions here. About the firstborn. Excuse me, I just want to catch this. Maybe he despised his birthright as an aftermath. He despised what he knew he lost. Possibly. We don't see really a lot of lament until later when he does not give in the blessings. He doesn't really seem to care for it so much. He's talking about his being as being weary. He's really going for immediate gratification. So perhaps, I'm not ruling it out. I'm not saying no. I'm not in a position to ever do that unless it's something very clear that we need to clarify in terms of some doctrinal issue that might have a lot of infused beliefs in it. But perhaps, I think it definitely plays out. That he did, like Steve just said, he took for granted. Okay, so we have, Raymond Boo, sport hunting. Torah mentions hunting for food, but champions no cruelty to animals. Figure it out. Amen. Okay, so we have the aspect of the firstborn. A question, was the firstborn scripturally supposed to always receive the best blessing and major part of the inheritance? If so, are we supposed to do this in our own families? And also, can you elaborate on the spoken blessing and how to do it appropriately? Suppose it is done by the head of our family. Please expand a bit on the topic. Just for the sake of time and brevity, we can definitely focus on the aspect of the firstborn, that this definitely hints and something that plays through, that we see throughout, of the blessings not necessarily going to the firstborn. I'm not saying this is what you do in your family. That even leads up to Yeshua, as he was not, the firstborn among men, but he will be the firstborn ruling over all creation. We see this even later with Yaakov, with his hands being crossed. And Yosef's like, hey, what's going on here? But in terms of the aspect internally with the family, I would definitely refer you to your local leader, or Rabbi Steve or Shamash Robert, in terms of the spoken blessing, how to do that, just because it's personal and I don't think it's necessarily helpful to the study. But I think what is helpful, and I definitely thank you for asking that question, is the aspect of the firstborn, and that verse 27 there, I believe it is no, not verse 27. Later, hint at verse 23 shows the continued theme of the firstborn not being the one who leads. Coming here, let's see. We have a comment from Shira from before. If the three wives of the 3 patriarchs, all of whom struggled with barrenness, Rivka stood out to me as the meek one, who was not reported as getting in her husband's face about it or trying to overcome it in her own way. Therefore, to me, it seems more in character of Rivka to have been in submission or in agreement with her husband regarding the deception over the blessing of the firstborn. That's quite possible. We definitely see, her also relationship with receiving the word of the aspect of that the younger would rule over the older. So thank you for that, Shira. Let's see. I'm just seeing there's a lot, so please bear with me. Okay, we'll definitely get to all of that. Just a quick note by Aaron that I think is important about the Avimelech of Gerar. How is it, it's the same. That it's definitely, we had Raymond and Gary covering that. It's two different accounts. That Avimelech is a title, it's not a name. So it could be my father is the king, or father of the king. Either one, you could read it, but it wouldn't be the same person. Two different accounts. Okay. AJ, this is a good time. Go ahead and ask your question as we just...
Yeah, absolutely. My question's actually in 26. So my question for you is, so in chapter 26, verses 9 and 10, we could really see that Abimelech is upset with Yitzhak. And I want to take Raymond's caution. I don't want to blame him for sin by any means, but I think through the text, you can really see that he was upset. He's really blasting him. But then here in verses 26, you see that Abimelech came with one of his friends and the commander of his army. So he's got two witnesses, right, to make amends. That it would be fair to assume, or fair to see that there was an error, and he wanted to fix that error and make amends, doing so with two witnesses and the oath. But my question is, and actually a little bit more context, but he did it with respect, with reverence and hospitality. So my question is I understand that we need to treat our leadership like that, the anointed and appointed in that way, if we do make an error. But could we also apply this in today with our bosses, with elders? If there is some sense of error, would it be fair to kind of take it as, how are we going about fixing that error? And would the fixing of the error of, say, bosses or elders or people that are not just kind of the anointed and appointed leadership, does that also reflect how you look at the Father? Does that make sense? Or how you fix it with the Father?
Yes, absolutely. And I think you actually, we didn't set this up. You definitely tee up the next kind of comment question that in chapter 26. And Dan actually hints at it as well. So we'll get to that question, AJ. So we see here, and let's just ask, we'll do some ones and twos. We have the blessing in verse 4. This is to Yitzchak. Was it because of something Yitzchak had done at that point? One or two? Come on, don't be shy. See those numbers. Two. Correct. We see here the covenant language in verse 5. Why? Why is there? Why these promises made, promises kept? That's kind of the phrase I put in my notes, is the promises made by Hashem to Avraham. We see because he obeyed, because he guarded the commands, the laws, and the Torah. So that's the kind of entry point to that. It shows also the complexity of Torah, the multiple layers, the different aspects, the hukim, the mishpatim, the ones we understand, the ones we don't understand. Well, actually flip that. Mishpatim would be the ones we would understand. Hukim means the ones that are beyond our understanding, but we have to do because the Elohim said to do them. So it shows the complexity of all of those aspects. And then so for you, AJ, and thank you for that, and the reason I start with that is that there's this understanding of promises made, and then also Yitzchak inheriting that and understanding through his training and through his father to stand still and wait for Abba's commandments, even if it's not the most convenient option, because we see right before that, he was told not to go to Mitzrayim, which could have been a convenient option, because we know that Mitzrayim was the center of economic flourishing and definitely a great opportunity for people to use in times, and we see that. We see Israel going down to Mitzrayim time and time again, many times. But here, there was an explicit instruction. So we see here the promises made to Abraham, but then Yitzchak acting and listening and standing still and going down. And so getting to your question about the kind of restoration, the covenant here regarding our bosses and everything, a long intro, but my question is, we see at the end that they come to him. And he says, and we can read it, he says, we have clearly seen that Yahweh is with you. Even after he had, basically blasphemed Yitzchak for saying, oh, well, what if one of our people had slept with your wife, which we covered earlier, which is their own lawlessness. That's not Yitzchak's problem. But he came to them and he said, Yahweh is with you. So my question, and AJ, this is kind of getting to, and I hope this helps, is, are we showing the world? Are we demonstrating to our leaders, to our bosses, to our family, to our friends on Facebook, all of it, that Hashem is with us, that somebody would look to us, just like we know we were meant to be the light on the hill, and to be the envy of the world, not envying the world? Are we showing the world that Hashem is with us, because that leads to the blessing and the good fruit? So that's my kind of question for you, AJ. I think absolutely. I think that's a great question, is that in those times, and we see even before that, that the wells are kept on being filled with dirt, right? Which is kind of a, low blow, honestly. You build a well and they fill it with dirt. Build another well, fill it with dirt. Over and over again. And what did Yitzchak do? We'll do some more ones and twos. Did he engage in attack? Nope. Did he move on and go to the next one and trust Elohim? Amen. He did. So he listened to the command, don't go to Mitzrayim. Stay here. I will be with you. He goes into this land. And again, like Raymond said, and I want to bring this back in, he gives this slight twisting of, quote, the truth at that time, which was the aspect of the wife and the sister. He's trusting Elohim. He's being in possibly dangerous grounds. He's blessed. He's flourishing. They attack him. He just moves on. And then they come to him and say, hey, you have something different. And that's when he would say, I'm paraphrasing and kind of inventing a story here, just for our modern times, is, I'm glad you asked. I have Hashem and his son and his precious blood, Messiah. And so here, I think it's a great example for us, is that, and I want to thank Arthur, because he raised this point about the wells and the dirt, maybe last year or the year before. Yeah, to turn the other cheek, sort of, to understand that, if Elohim is for us, who's against us? That we can just move on and not, battle over wells with dirt. And I think that's actually a pretty good image, especially a lot of stuff that happens, on social media. Like, why are we battling over wells with dirt? Let's just move on. Trust that Yah will provide a well. And then what did you see? And thank you so much, AJ, for bringing this up, is that after they came and made the covenant, on that same day, verse 32, they informed him about the well which they had dug. We have found water. So it led to blessing and good fruit when we don't engage. Oh yeah, there, Gary, awesome. Water and dirt equals mud. Amen. That is awesome. Thank you, Gary. Yeah, we do not want to play in the mud. We don't want to play in the mud and throw mud at other people or slip in the mud. Pigs play in the mud, exactly. Wow, that's great, Gary. Thank you so much for that. And this is, just again, this is how these studies work. Just amazing to see are the daily bread that we need. And I think this is a great lesson for us, is that we need to stand still, trust, move on when we're being attacked, and don't play in the mud. And then the living waters will shine through. We are Israel, a nation, cool, clear water, amen. Israel, a nation of all nations, to set the way, righteousness and justice. All nations should look and seek to our way of leaving. That is Hashem's program, blessed his name. Can't play in the mud and not get it on you. As a reminder that we want to, this is from Raymond, to own our mistakes, not only with superiors. Matthew 5:23. If then you bring your gift to the slaughter place, and there remember that your brother holds whatever against you, leave your gift there before the slaughter place and go. First, make peace with your brother, and then come and offer your gifts. Amen. And actually, that ties into, just quickly, questions. There were some questions about Cain and Abel and firstborns and hunting. I think that's a great connection there too, because we saw that Yahweh said, hey, don't you know what to do? I'm paraphrasing. You know what to do is right. You know how to give it, and that could be not only the way it's offered, but also the attitude, the fullness of it. Like Raymond brings to mind, to forgive and to make right, and that's with each other. It's Matthew 18 process, and then of course with our superiors in all aspects. So if we're shining our light and we're not playing the mud, and I think that's a great takeaway from this study, don't play in the mud and just move on and the waters will flow, that we will receive good fruit. And not just for us, but look, those people, they had a feast and they departed in peace. Don't we want that with our interactions with the world, family, friends, for them to depart in peace, even if they don't necessarily are in the same walk with us, even if they're not in the same understanding, which we know is Abba's job and not ours? So yes, I think that's peace, if possible, make peace with all men. And I think right here we see a type and shadow of that. Raymond, I see your hand. Just 1 second. We've got a couple things here. George, one of my favorite things to say when someone looks at how I live my life, why would anyone want I have? Want what I have? I have? Amen. Yeah, I mean, it's precious. It is the pearl that we sell everything for. Amen. Okay, Raymond, go ahead, and we're leading up to the...
So just a quick thing for us to think about, as long as we bumped into the playing in the mud imagery and how that connects with pigs, obviously that's imagery we don't want on us. That's not the clothing we want to wear, etc., the identity that we want to be clothed in. Just a reminder that, the way that Yeshua gave his teachings and his revelations was, not really to the masses, but really to the disciples. And he taught his disciples the same way, saying, don't throw your pearls before swine, or give set apart things to dogs, or hang earrings on dogs, is how the Aramaic renders it. But, the idea there, if he told his own disciples not to throw pearls before swine, and then, he looks down on us and we're rolling around in the mud and slinging the mud and all the thing. If we're behaving like that, maybe there's a little bit of a moratorium on giving us pearls at that point too. So, get out of that mud and get clean. Let's come out of the unclean and not touch the unclean, and then he'll want to have something to do with us. Amen.
And this, Sami and I read this last week. I just want to read it because I just think it's beautiful. Yochanan 4:13 and 14. Yeshua answered and said to her, everyone drinking of this water shall thirst again, but whoever drinks of the water I give him shall certainly never thirst. And the water that I give him shall become in him a fountain of water, springing up into everlasting life. Amen. Amen. Whew. This is great. All right. So we are going to get into chapter 27. I just want to finish, and I have your questions before about the aspect of deception and planned or not planned, but I just want to focus quickly on verse 35 of chapter 26, 34 and 35. Well, what does it say? Well, Esau took as wives, and we have learned in previous portions, and we learn at the end of this portion the command to not take wives from that land, to keep it in the camp for very specific reasons, that he took them, and those wives were of bitterness of spirit, Yitzchak and Rivka. So let's just preface everything before we get into 27, and then you guys can go ahead. And we're right on time. We've got about 20 minutes left. Is Esau had sold his birthright. Whether or not the parents, Yitzchak and Rivka, knew about this, we don't know. It doesn't say that. We don't have enough information. But there was clearly here an interaction and a relationship, and we can see this. And I mean, you can attest to this. We all can attest to that when there is family tension, especially with spouses-in-laws. It is painful on everybody involved. And so they were of bitterness of spirit, which brings to mind that bitterness, and we see this all throughout the scriptures, from Deuteronomy to Hebrews, that bitterness is what will kill us, that root of bitterness that we must not have in our hearts, that they were resentful towards Yitzchak and Rivka, and that Yitzchak and Rivka were most likely grieved because of this. And so it is very important to notice here that before we get to 27, there's this intentional aspect of Esau being of the world, something we connected to before, focusing on hunting, possible pagan, practices, through these wives of others, because think about it, he marries them. Well, whatever they're doing is going to influence him. I mean, we all know it as husbands, our wives influence us, and for the better most of the time, and praise Yah for that. But also know that if this was the situation with Esau, that bitterness from them was going to, play off. And we see Beth here, don't cause bitterness in my in-laws. We have Steve, let all bitterness and wrath and displeasure, uproar and slander be put away from you, along from evil. Yeah, bitterness, that root of bitterness. Davidson, shalom. Thanks, everyone. Absolutely. The recording will be posted tomorrow or the next day, so you can finish. We have Dan. We have the greater picture in mind, walking in Torah. You don't get hung up on wells, dirt, or elections, which can definitely be muddy, especially at this point in the polls. And just a note on that, and Rabbi said this before, if you want to exercise your right to vote, go right ahead. If you feel that there's someone in the short term that can influence it for the better, great. But we all know that we should not be focused and be obsessed in what's going on, the outcome, and thinking that anything is going to be different than the will that Abba has. So I think that's pretty important. So thank you for bringing that up on today. Again, go ahead and vote. Nothing wrong with that, but understand the will, understand that whatever person wins is not going to affect the will in the long run. But if you think that person will improve short term for a living, whatever situation you have, sure, Rabbi Steve has said go right ahead. Okay, so now to finish chapter 27, I just want to preface it with this, with the aspect of the plan, or possible not plan, with the blessing. And yes, and Raymond says, how could Yitzchak and Rivka possibly feel good about passing Esau the covenant? Nuh-uh. Right, and that's why I made a focus on the birthright selling and of the wives, is because there was something that Esau was doing that was not right. So I'm going to give you two scenarios. I don't know if you've seen the movie Inception, but I'm going to use a similar approach, which is it doesn't matter if the top was spinning or not. If you've never seen the movie, don't worry about it. What I'm saying is it doesn't matter if this was planned or not planned. But let's give one scenario that, yes, they were all in on it because they saw Esau was walking in wickedness. They saw that, he was marrying wives from outside the camp, and that he was being intentionally rebellious, and that he was not going to pass on the legacy of servant to Elohim and righteousness. And so they created this plan, and were all in on it to then pass along and actually fulfill Yah's will that was promised to Rivka. Okay, that's scenario one. Or scenario two, Yitzchak was actually too old. Rivka knew something had to be done because of what she was seeing that maybe Yitzchak was not able to see, because maybe not only his eyes, and not just physical eyes, were dim, but his actual, in terms of eyes to see and ears to hear, maybe his eyes were a little dim there. And so that aspect of it, so maybe he didn't actually know. And Rivka did something, and then, like you said, Kevin, Yaakov was honoring his mother and not shaming her by obeying. Because if he had gone into that room and then Yitzchak was to ask him, and he said, no, I'm actually Yaakov, then the question would possibly be, well, what are you doing? Well, my mom put me up to this. That would be exposing his mother's shame and would not be honoring as she asked him. Is it a necessarily good situation all around? No, I'm not saying that. But perhaps in either one, yes, exposing the nakedness, exposing the disgrace, perhaps in scenario one, they were all in on it, right? So yes, maybe they forced the issue, that Rivka heard that the older would serve the younger. Maybe she forced the issue. But who knows how much they knew that Esau had already sold his birthright. And so maybe that's why Yaakov was going along with it, because he knew that when Yitzchak was to bless him, that there wouldn't actually be a wrong blessing, which is possibly why Yitzchak trembled, because he felt that he actually had blessed the wrong person, which could have been problematic. And so Yaakov maybe knew. So again, we don't know who knew what, which I think this is a very fascinating interaction and a great test and lesson for us, that we don't know how much everybody else knew. So maybe Yaakov knew, his mother didn't know, and so he decided to say, well, I know that this is okay because Esau had already sold the birthright. So I give that to you to kind of choose whatever scenario you want. But the issue here, and again, like we said before, and tying back to what Achi Raymond said, is that rather than subjecting ourselves into judging the characters and what they did was right or wrong, let's look at Yah's will. The will was done. The older was to serve the younger. Esau and the nation of Edom was full of bloodshed. And the nation of Israel, of course, we transgressed the covenant, and we are in the dispersion, but we are a nation still dedicated to learning and studying Torah. And so I think that's an important aspect, that they believed, yes, like you said, Dan, Yah's promises, and the will was done. How it actually went out, I think it would be very, very difficult and dangerous for us to draw a line on who did what. And yes, I see verse 35, that aspect of your brother came in with deceit and took your blessing. And I think, honestly, in my possible theory, that in either scenario, that works. Scenario 1, he said, yeah, he came in because they were all in on it. Or scenario 2, he didn't know at that point, and therefore it was, quote, deceitful. But again, we have to be very careful on our modern interpretations of deceit, lying, everything in that aspect. But I think what Kevin said about honoring the fifth commandment is very, very important. The aspect of not exposing his mother and shaming it in that situation. There's lots going on here. It's possible that they were testing Esau and Jacob, and that's why they sent Esau out at the end, to see if he would still value hunting and to see what Yaakov would do in this situation. Okay. Just wanted to mention that. All is mentioned was in on it. Does them all in on it, does it mean the father, not also the mother? Yes, that's what I mean. That Yitzchak also possibly knew, and they knew what happened with the wives, and they saw what Esau was doing. And like Raymond said, there's no way that they're going to have this pass on, which is why, we see Yah's will, that there was no way that covenant was going to pass on to Esau. And we see even in his reaction, let's look just quickly at verse 36. He says, he took me 2 times. He took my birthright. No, buddy, I'm sorry. You sold your birthright. So I think there's another test to even see Esau's reaction in the entire matter. Okay? Plain selfishness on Rivka's part, wanting the blessing for her son. It's possible. I mean, favoritism among children is nothing new. And that's why I said she possibly could have been forcing the issue. And we see maybe later, with the interaction of Lavan, maybe something that, came to fruition, because of that. But again, I am no position, no seat to say what was what. All we know is that Yah's will be done, and that there's a reason that Esau was not, among other reasons, to pass the covenant. And again, I think this is the idea of being in the world and not of it, being studious and focusing on Torah and righteousness, and not getting in the way of, and not having our hobbies get in the way of our walk. Okay, we have here, maybe Yitzchak recognized the voice and did the other tests to make sure it was Yaakov. The trembling could be out of fear of Esau's reaction. Very possible. Again, that's another possibility, that they were all in on it. Yaakov took the blame because Esau was violent and could have taken the anger out on his father and mother. Again, very possible in all of that. That Yitzchak was weak at that point. Okay, just want to wrap this up, and then I'll pass it over to you, Raymond. The blessing was given to the one with the birthright. This is how they're able to fulfill the responsibility of the birthright. Exactly. That the birthright had already been sold, and then the blessing was there to confirm on it. Even if Yitzchak thought it was Esau, in whatever scenario we're playing with, the laying of the hands and the giving of the blessing was the passing on of that blessing to confirm the birthright. Yes, we should accept the positions of servants and not leaders of the nation of Israel. Love, yes. The respect, honor towards our ancient fathers. We must be careful what we accuse them without pointing fingers. What do we take from this event of this aspect? Well, I think it's, to go back, how easy is it for us to sell our birthright? Because of all of these interactions, and, somebody had mentioned in a previous Torah study, it's like Dallas, the soap opera, which I've never seen, but that might make sense to some people. Shalom Reds, Laila Tov, that we need to know how quickly we're going to sell our birthright. Because all of this possibly could have avoided by the birthright selling by Esau, by the wickedness of taking other wives, of the focusing and the walking. And so his walk said a lot even before this event played out. And we see that confirmed in chapter 28. He sees that the daughters did not please his father, and he still took them. So the actions are still the same. So I think it's important to focus overall as, are we in the world? Are we of it? And what is our walk and our actions saying to the world to show that Hashem is with us, to possibly, in these situations, not be in something that we actually have caused and not to blame.
All right, now that everybody's had an opportunity to ruminate and to chew on the different ways to interpret these things, and how we have a choice, when we look at these stories, since they are about real people, we have a choice about whether or not we're going to have Torah and character and integrity in how we interpret, and show a little bit of the fruit of that, and say,
whatever version actually happened, whatever layers were actually happening, actually went on, the way that you interpret it casts either light or darkness over your own character and over your own path. And, you have to be aware of that because, even if it was something, a negative event, etc., by too easily going to the negative without actual proof, we're still skipping steps, and therefore that's not a positive, just conclusion. Even if you're right, it's not a positive, just conclusion, to skip steps in judgment. And so I'm just going to give some example real quick so that we can see that, and then hand the mic back and we can move on. But the which Yaakov would you rather see as the ancestor of the tribes and as the successor to Abraham and ancestor to Mashiach? Would you rather see the scheming Yaakov who is trying to trick his father and all of those things, or be careful with that, okay? Even if you believe that he did something like, I'm just saying, be careful on how you shine that light. Are we shining a white light or a black light, so to speak? Or would you rather see like Yaakov is doing these things for good motivations, whether the parents knew or didn't know, whether Yitzchak knew or didn't know? We want to be really, really careful about imputing motives, and if we do, what kind, and not to speculate too deeply about the character. But if you can see, for example, the potential, if you can practice this discipline of giving the benefit of the doubt and trying hard to see how there might have been good motivations, how there might have been righteous motivations, you can actually get better at doing that with your living brothers and sisters as well if you practice it in the scriptures, and then that light shines out through your life. And we can look at Yaakov and see, here's somebody who was willing to risk getting in trouble for the sake of his mother's honor. His mother told him to do something. He said, I don't want to. Here's a problem. I think I see a problem, Mom. And she says, well, do it anyway. It'll be okay. And he does. And he gets into this situation, and when given the opportunity, like David mentioned, when given the opportunity to tell on his mother, he doesn't. Instead, he enters into a course of action that could really potentially get him in trouble, maybe as far as he knows. And so what do we see in that, where somebody, on behalf of the course of action his mother has chosen, he is entering into a penalty, potentially. And so that we see, related to the character of Pinchas. Pinchas, we'll read about later, but many of you will remember him as the one who, went into judge, jury, and executioner mode in order to save the people of the nation. And we see this same character manifest in Hezekiah, in David, and ultimately in Yeshua, of saying, I'm going to stand in the gap, and I'm going to take upon myself the risk of the penalty or the actual penalty for the sake of saving someone else.
Amen. Amen. Exactly. He and me, we stand up in the breaches, stand up in the gap. And I think that's a great way to put it to close, and just want to have Travis's comment there of could the bloodline guarantee taking his position as firstborn for granted, but no desire to do the doings, because we know that Yeshua will only do what he has to do and what he had to do, and we must do what we have to do. And like Raymond said, that is to step up and be that person that does not, allow that wickedness to stand. And I think that's something even interesting to think about, that Esau had the technical firstborn, and then Yaakov, who would become Israel, actually was the one who, had the opportunity to then graft in, even though he was already in, which is an interesting flip on the fact that then he would cause to be Israel, to where we have the last visible remnant of Judah of grafting into that, which is very interesting to see that, we need whatever that guarantee is, whatever that birthright is, to take it for granted. But thank you, Travis. I think it's pretty interesting how he almost foreshadowed what Ephraim would do later. as part of the fulfillment of the promise. So a couple of questions, and we'll tie this together. Michelle says, I am reminded of when we follow and obey, how much more will be given to, and when we think we have and do not follow his way, that'll be taken away. Amen. He who possesses, who thinks he possesses will be, even what he possesses will be taken away from. Amen. We need to be careful and guard what he has asked to do. Gary says we cannot judge the motive. Amen. And we have Robert and Lita, the prophecy of the older serving the younger is a possible explanation of the constant struggle between spirit and flesh. And if we persevere, the younger will eventually win out. Yeah, I think that's a way to kind of wrap everything together that we even see here with Yaakov when he is asked, how did you find the meat so quickly? He praised Elohim. And it hints that Yitzchak possibly knew that there's no way Esau would do that. So are we the ones willing to give that answer to praise Elohim? Are we the ones to give that example so that we can demonstrate that they know our voice, just as we know Messiah's voice? Whereas the hairy arms might imply the material focus, but do our voices, do our answers to the call show what we know to be true and what we have to do? All right, yeah, so much to think about. And we're going to start the countdown in just 1 second. I just want to make sure these last comments. Yeah, the older serving the younger. Yes, Elohim promised. Giving the benefit of doubt requires more submission to, yeah, exactly. If we give you an answer, if we said this is exactly what happened and this is why, that's more logic. That's not faith. That's not emunah. And I think it, kind of prevents us from learning the overall lesson that we can learn here. Yes, we'll get to the closing prayer in a second. Of how Yitzchak added the blessing of Abraham on top of his own blessing to Yaakov instead of giving one to Esau. We see here that the blessing there, it hints again at this material aspect that still is in submission to the spiritual, that Esau would then take. Yah's will be done, period. The graft must be protected so that takes hold. And Raymond says he's happy to recommend good free tools to do word studies. However, ask him again another time to consider whether it'd be better to have a milk a little longer before the meat. I believes word studies that are better for somewhat more mature in the faith. And so finally, that aspect, I'll just make one last point. It's 8 o'clock and we'll do the closing. Is that an interesting explanation here is that with the of the world in the world, that only with us being in it and being spiritually founded, spiritually grounded, and really steeped in the wisdom of Hashem, with training, with qualification, with discipleship, and really, really being rooted, can we make proper use of the material world. Only when we know how to interact with it based on what's pleasing in his eyes can we actually interact with our material surroundings in the proper way. Something that we could see hinted here, as we've discussed throughout, that Esau did not have that grounding and therefore was not making use, whether that was the hunting, the wives, the despising of all of this. He did not have the proper perspective of the material in the spiritual. And then finally, what Raymond said about who are we going to look at for Yaakov, it reminds me of the Life of Pi movie. Are you going to believe the story of this child, the boy in a boat with the sailor and the other characters, or are you going to believe that he was with animals? And that is, as they say in the movie, that is the belief in Adonai. Obviously, they don't have this context, but right there, that is what belief is about. Which story are you going to believe? And right here, we believe that Yah's will be done. So with that, thank you all for participating. It was a wonderful study, and I thank everyone for chiming in. Shamash Robert for helping facilitate. Raymond, of course, for his insight, and everyone else's comments and questions that actually make the study what it is. Raymond knows, he's led many, that you could come to it fully, quote, prepared, but it's nothing until you ask the questions, and that's how we actually make the midrash happen with your participation. So yes, we will have a closing prayer. I'd ask one of the men to close in prayer, and I appreciate everyone again taking time out of their busy schedule to be here. So men, go ahead and raise your hand, and then we will do the countdown. I saw AJ first. That's the first one that my screen showed me. So,
yes, Father, what just an amazing time just to come together as a family, as a congregation, and just delight in your Torah, just to delight in your word. May the prayers that have been said today be brought before you. May your will be done. And may the ones that are unspoken be brought before you that are done. And anything that needs to be disturbed, let it be disturbed, as long as that your will is done today. And thank you for the leadership. Thank you for the ones that led the direction of tonight, that gave them their insight, but also giving us an opportunity for our voices to be heard. It's a tremendous blessing that we have this Torah study throughout the week, that we have a congregation that really wants us to grow. And Father, we're very thankful that you've given us that blessing, given us that opportunity. And may it nourish us. May it guard us through the week. May we reflect and meditate what was given to us today. That little extra manna that we can hold near and dear to our heart. And Father, we're just so grateful that we have your word, that we have our fathers to learn from, to see what they did in their times. These men that you've given us as inspiration. So we're very grateful. We're full, we're satisfied. And everything that we ask in the name of your Son, set apart name of Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen, amen.
Amen. Amen. Beautiful. Thank you for that, AJ. And we will start the countdown at 10. Let everyone wish a Lila Tov and see you all. Thank you, all of you. Honestly, thank you for coming here. It's nothing. It's nothing without you. We got to the mud, playing in the mud, and I mean that's just awesome stuff. It's just like a jam session. Nothing without you. So Torah to all of you for participating. We'll give it a 9. And I just want to give you the actual quote from the ending of Life of Pi, because I think it's a great aspect, especially to this story. We have this account of Yitzchak, Rivka, Yaakov, and Esau. And so it says, which story do you prefer? The person says, the one with the tiger, that's the better story. And the adult says, thank you. And so it goes with God. So amen. All right, that's number 8. Good night, everyone. The hairy arms references were funny. Glad you liked that. Give it a 7, 6. Laila Tov. Good night, everyone. Left and right, up and down, U.S., Canada, wherever you're chiming in from. Thank you all for joining. Shout out to MTOI Alberta. We'll see you on Erev Shabbat Friday night. Love you all. Raymond says, Zims, certainly reach out. Awesome. Excited to see the fruit of that. What do we have? 5-4. Greg says, I think he heard Rufino. Yeah, at one point he was probably squealing. And he's a lot of work. Praise Yah. He is just adorable. 3, 2. Laila Tov. Really, thank you all. Blessing. Shalom, shalom. Laila Tov. And see you on Shabbat.